I'll have more points about that later, trust me. So in Justice League, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Cyborg have to team up together in order to stop the intergalactic warlord Steppenwolf, played by Kieran Hines, from collecting these free devices called the Mother Boxes, which are capable of destroying the entire planet. Zack Snyder's direction features beautiful cinematography that's actually pretty rare in most superhero movies nowadays. During a climactic scene, he uses many low-angle shots or tilted angles in order to build suspense and tension, and massive wide shots that show just how huge the scope is of this world that the characters live in. The opening credits alone tells its own story just through the music and the images in each frame about how certain characters, and even some parts of the world, are negatively affected by the death of Superman. And the action scenes really showcase each character's powers and abilities. The way the Flash uses the Speed Force, Batman's arsenal of gadgets, and his fighting techniques, and just how strong Wonder Woman is, all of these things are really fun to watch on screen, and there's some creative use of location and choreography to make each fight scene feel different from the other. And out of all the League members, my two favorites by far were the Flash and Cyborg. Ezra Miller brings a lot of energy to the role of Barry Allen, as you would expect him to, but he also has this awkward charm where, just like everyone else, he usually works on his own. And ever since he joins the team, he says whatever is on his mind pretty much just because he's so excited to be part of a team, but at the same time he's worried about what everyone else will think of him after he says these things. And Ray Fisher feels genuinely vulnerable as Cyborg. His body is still processing all of these new abilities, so every time he discovers a new trick that he can do, he's nervous and he's not sure of how to process this information. So for every time he does something that contributes in a good way to the team, he makes just as many mistakes, and it lowers his confidence as a result. It is cool to see Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot on screen again, but that's mostly because I'd already seen them in other movies. Because in this one, they're not given as much depth as they had before, I guess to make room for the newer characters in the movie. But I will say this, among the biggest changes between the two characters, Batman is a lot more optimistic and quippy than he was in BVS, and the excuse that they give is that it's because Superman has given him new hope in humanity, which, I don't know, at the end of BVS he was still this brooding and tragic figure that we had really grown to appreciate, so I don't really buy the transition. And I was really looking forward to seeing Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I mean, his design looked really badass, the actor looked like he was having a ton of fun, but he's barely in the movie, and he's the least developed out of all the Justice League members. We never see how he gets to rule over Atlantis, how he divides his time between there and Earth. Most of his character depth is just him standing still and delivering exposition about his backstory. He doesn't even get to use his powers all that often. I mean, he can telekinetically move water and swim at superhuman speed, and yeah, telepathically communicate with underwater animals. Every time we see him use these powers, it's only for like a few seconds. Most of his fight scenes are just him using his superhuman strength and his trident as a weapon, and that's pretty much it. I mean, the big climax of the movie is set in this nuclear wasteland where there's no water and no way for him to use his own superhuman abilities, and he doesn't stand out that well amongst the other League members as a result. But my biggest problem with the movie is that there's just too much shit going on in the plot. You of course have the main story where the Justice League is forming together so they can find the Mother Boxes before Steppenwolf does, who, by the way, he's a really boring villain. His only motivation is that he likes conquering over worlds and that his pride depends on it. That's pretty much it. But aside from the main story, you have all these extra subplots about character relationships that are either never resolved or they just end abruptly. For example, Cyborg hates his father for making him the way he is. But once his dad's kidnapped, all of a sudden that hatred just disappears and it's never referenced again. And as for the team dynamic and the team leadership, I had no idea who the team leader was supposed to be, because Batman and Diana both give the orders, but Batman somehow has the majority rule, even though, once again, he's the loner, he does things on his own. But then in another scene where he provokes Diana over Steve Trevor's death, she later goes on to him and says, "You were setting me up for a team leadership role." And I'm just like, how is that setting you up for a team leadership role? I don't understand that. And I'm not going to get into the other extra subplots surrounding, like, say, Superman or the other extra characters that come with his movies as a result, because it's just too much information to deal with. Justice League should have been straightforward and simple. It's well shot, well acted, and does have exciting moments of action. But there's just too many extra story details that make it more complicated than it needed to be. And it drives me insane that audience members and fans post such hateful, one-sided comments like the ones that I just showed you in the beginning over a movie like this. Movies are subjective. The pros and cons that I just listed might not apply to you as a moviegoer. Which is fine. Everyone's different, to each his own. Comic books are subjective. There are images and word bubbles, but we have to imagine the voices of these characters in our heads and what their words mean for ourselves. What I hate the most about these Marvel shows who love to rub in how successful the MCU movies are, and supposedly how, as if they contributed to the success of it, when really all they did was just cough up $10 for a ticket. Or these DC shows who are just so insecure about the fact that most people hate something they love, and they just feel as if they have to call people biased or stupid because they just didn't get it. The thing that Marvel shills and DC shills have in common is that they both think that they're right, that there's something objective about comic books or comic book movies, and there isn't. And if you're okay with the stuff that I just showed at the beginning and think that there's nothing wrong with it, I only have one thing to say to that, and is that, in my opinion, you're a fucking brat. Plain and simple. If you think that people are biased, that's fine. But name-calling and just accusing everyone else who doesn't like it of also being biased, it doesn't solve anything, and chances are you're probably wrong. And if you're posting this stuff just because it makes you feel better about it, you don't deserve it to get better. At all. Well, guys, thank you very much for watching all the way through. I hope you enjoyed some of the things that I had to say there. What are your thoughts on Justice League? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What do you think of the DC universe and how it's going forward? Whatever you think, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other reviews at NoPerfectMovie.com. And once again, thank you all very much for watching. Take care.